Picture this. You open your eyes and instantly you know something is wrong. The air is heavy, not just I forgot to do laundry heavy, but coal smoke, horse manure, and yesterday's boiled cabbage heavy. You reach for your phone and there's nothing, not even a clock. Instead, a tiny brass bell sits beside your bed like it's judging you. Congratulations. You're in Victorian England, a place where everything you do, from the angle you hold your teacup to how many inches of your ankle are visible, could either make you a social star or destroy you faster than you can say, "My dearest, I'm ruined." And no, Hollywood lied to you. This isn't all candlelit balls and handsome men with brooding stares. It's more like candlelit balls and gaslighting. Literally, they actually lit gas, indoors. So before you decide you'd totally thrive here, get comfortable, grab a snack, maybe pour yourself some tea, but for the love of Queen Victoria, don't slurp. Tonight, you're not just learning history, you're living it. You wake up in a bed that feels like someone stuffed a sack with a combination of horsehair and regret. It's narrow. The sheets are crisp but about as soft as paper, and the room is freezing. Your breath fogs in the air because, fun fact, central heating is decades away, and the little fire that kept you warm last night is now just a sad glowing ember in the grate. The first sound you hear? Not your alarm. No, it's the distant clatter of iron-rimmed carriage wheels over cobblestones, a dog barking somewhere down the street, and the faint whistle of a chimney sweep already starting work. The smell? Coal smoke. Always coal smoke. It sneaks through every window crack like an uninvited guest who also ruins your curtains. Then, footsteps on the stairs. The door creaks open and in sweeps Mary, your maid, looking far more awake than you'll ever be before noon. She curtsies, already in full dress, because in the Victorian world, pajamas are strictly for bed. And if someone did see you in yours, well, congratulations, you're a scandal now. "Good morning, miss," she says. "Shall I draw the curtains?" She doesn't wait for an answer. Heavy velvet drapes are pulled back, revealing weak gray daylight through soot-streaked glass. This is London, and the sun here is more of a rumor than a fact. Here's the thing, from the moment your feet touch the cold floorboards, you're already playing by Victorian social rules, and they are everywhere. What you wear, how you speak, which hand you hold your parasol in, even the speed you walk at in public. And the best part? Nobody will actually tell you the rules. You're just supposed to know them, like you absorbed the entire etiquette for ladies' manual in the womb. Step out of line, and you might as well tattoo pariah on your forehead. Mary heads to your wardrobe, and I hope you've stretched because getting dressed is basically a Victorian CrossFit workout. First comes the chemise, a long cotton slip, then the corset, which Mary laces tighter and tighter until your lungs feel like they've been downgraded to the size of teacups. You tell her tighter because a proper Victorian lady's waist should, ideally, be the circumference of a large ham. She obliges, pulling so hard you can practically feel your ribs filing a complaint. Then come the petticoats, 3 of them, followed by the crinoline, a steel-hooped cage that makes your skirt flare out like you're hiding a small tent underneath. The final dress goes over everything, tight in the bodice and massive in the skirt, weighing in at a casual 15 pounds. Fashion, baby. Your hair is pulled back so tightly you briefly wonder if you've accidentally had a facelift, and it's arranged into an elegant bun at the nape of your neck. No flyaways, no personality, everything controlled. Mary offers you gloves or mittens. You choose gloves because bare hands in public. Never, not unless you're deliberately trying to ruin yourself. You dab a hint of bergamot oil onto a handkerchief. Perfume is banned for ladies thanks to Queen Victoria declaring it vulgar, and head downstairs for breakfast. And by breakfast, I mean a full, artery-clogging feast. eggs, bacon, kidneys, toast, and porridge. Not that you can eat much of it thanks to the corset preventing you from taking more than dainty little bites. Your father sits at the head of the table, newspaper raised like a barrier. Your mother is already writing letters, and both are fully dressed because God forbid anyone wears something casual to breakfast. Hugs? Affection? Absolutely not. Victorian families communicate primarily through nods and passive-aggressive reminders. Your mother casually mentions you have a morning call with Mrs. Hartley at 11, which, hilariously, is not in the morning at all. It's between 3 and 5 in the afternoon. Victorian logic. You nod, already mentally preparing for the 15-minute ritual of polite conversation and silent judgment. After breakfast, you settle into suitably feminine activities, needlework, sketching flowers, reading books that are wholesome but not too exciting. Victorian ladies are never idle, because idle hands are the devil's workshop. Eventually, it's time to venture out. You're dressed, bonnet on, gloves in place, parasol tucked under your arm, walking at a perfectly measured pace, because walking too quickly makes you look desperate and unladylike, and heaven forbid you enjoy yourself. You arrive exactly on time at Mrs. Hartley's home, because in this world, early is just as rude as late. You hand the butler your visiting card, perch on the edge of a sofa like your skirt is a booby trap, and exchange a series of carefully scripted pleasantries. You admire the weather without enthusiasm, compliment the recent sermon without sounding inspired, and offer congratulations on her daughter's engagement without daring to ask for details. Then, exactly 15 minutes later, you stand, curtsy, and leave. Morning call complete. And this careful dance of appearance, tone, and timing will be the rhythm of your life. Every moment, every gesture, every word weighed against the invisible rulebook you never asked to play by. You think that's exhausting? Oh, we're only just getting started. You return home feeling oddly accomplished for having survived 15 minutes of non-conversation, and you reward yourself with a light luncheon, meaning something like soup, bread, and the ever-present tea, because Victorians run on tea the way modern people run on Wi-Fi. Afterward comes the afternoon's next social trial, tea with your cousin Emily, who is family, which means you can relax by exactly 0.5%. The ritual is similar to the morning call, just with more biscuits and slightly less pretense. You sit perfectly upright, your hands encased in gloves so tight they feel like they've been vacuum sealed, discussing acceptably dull topics like the weather, embroidery, and what color is most fashionable for visiting dresses this season. Gossip? Technically forbidden, but in Victorian London, forbidden means done constantly, but with plausible deniability, which is why Emily waits until the maid leaves before leaning forward and whispering that Mrs. Pembroke was seen riding in a carriage alone with a certain Mr. Foster. The implication? Scandal. In modern terms, this is like being caught half naked on a yacht with Leonardo DiCaprio. There's really no way to spin it. You tut-tut sympathetically, pretending you're shocked, but in truth, this kind of thing is half the fun of being alive in an era where public disgrace is just one carriage ride away. When Emily leaves, you barely have time to catch your breath before the dinner bell rings. Not for the meal itself, but for you to start getting ready for it, because Victorian dinner preparation is less getting dressed and more assembling ceremonial armor. Mary runs you a shallow bath in a drafty room where steam curls against the cold stone like it's trying to escape. The water smells faintly of rose oil, which is a mercy because plumbing here is rudimentary at best, and you're trying to pretend the tin tub is luxurious. You dry off quickly, shivering, and then the layering begins again. Camise, corset, laced even tighter for the evening because apparently breathing is optional. Petticoats, crinoline, and finally your evening gown. Tonight, it's pale blue silk, trimmed with lace, the neckline low enough to reveal your collarbones but nothing else. This is Victorian London, not Bridgerton. Your hair is styled within an inch of its life, dotted with silk flowers, and your cheeks are powdered to achieve that fashionable, I've just been locked indoors for months pallor. No rouge, only actresses and women of questionable virtue wear rouge. Gloves on, fan in hand, you're ready. The family carriage, drawn by two glossy horses, whisks you to the Fairchild residence, a grand townhouse glowing with gaslight. Inside, you're greeted by a butler in immaculate livery who announces your family's arrival like you're contestants on some grim reality show. And there's Thomas Fairchild himself, taller than you remember, his dark hair perfectly in place, his bow the exact degree of polite interest without being overeager. He says your name, Miss Wilson, with the kind of formal warmth that makes you feel like you've been knighted, and you respond in kind, careful to sound neither cold nor inviting. The drawing room is already filling with guests, all standing because sitting before dinner is desperate behavior and conversation hums in that restrained way, where everyone is desperately trying to be interesting without risking offense. The dinner announcement comes like a starter pistol, and the host and hostess pair everyone off according to social rank, an arrangement as obvious as a seating chart at the Oscars. You find yourself escorting a middle-aged gentleman you've never met, while Thomas is across the room playing gallant to an elderly lady in a turban large enough to require planning permission. The dining room itself is a vision. Polished silver, fine china, and enough cutlery at each place setting to perform minor surgery. You sit halfway down the table, which is neither a triumph nor a humiliation. Conversation is limited to the guests on either side of you, and the topics are aggressively inoffensive: art, theater, and weather. You lie cheerfully about having enjoyed a dance with the nephew of the man on your right, despite the fact he'd stepped on your feet so many times you limped home. Dinner arrives in course after course: soup, fish, roast, game, pudding, each served with such ceremony you're half expecting a fanfare. You take tiny, delicate bites because the corset has compressed your stomach into the size of a child's teacup, and God forbid anyone see you chewing enthusiastically. After dessert, the hostess gives a subtle nod, and the ladies rise in unison to retreat to the drawing room, leaving the men to their port and cigars. You'd think this would be a chance to relax, but no. Now comes the musical entertainment. "Would you favor us with a piece, Miss Wilson?" Mrs. Fairchild asks, in a tone that is both a request and a royal decree. You agree modestly, pretending to hesitate, though in reality, refusing would be a catastrophic breach of etiquette. You seat yourself at the pianoforte, arrange your skirt like it's an unruly pet, and play something by Mozart enough to display skill, not enough to suggest ambition. Halfway through, you notice Thomas in the doorway, having rejoined the party, watching you with polite but unmistakable interest. You finish, accept the applause with a modest bow of the head, and return to your seat, the thrum of adrenaline hidden beneath your calm expression. When it's time to leave, Thomas appears in the entrance hall, bowing again and asking ever so properly if he might call on you the following afternoon. Your father grants permission, because of course he does, and you ride home in the dark, your mother's gloved hand resting over yours in silent approval. The next day, you prepare for Thomas's visit with the same care one might reserve for a royal inspection. Your dress is a deep burgundy walking gown, your bonnet pinned just so, your posture immaculate. When he arrives, punctual to the minute, you greet him in the drawing room, never alone, always with your mother present, and he invites you and her to an exhibition at the Royal Academy. Accepting is both expected and thrilling, and soon you're riding in the Fairchild carriage through the soot-streaked streets of London. At the Academy, the art is beautiful, the gossip is rampant, and Emma Parker, your unofficial romantic rival, appears like a bad penny, making thinly veiled attempts to monopolize Thomas's attention. He sidesteps her advances with perfect diplomacy, steering you and your mother away to view a collection of miniatures, which is Victorian code for "I'd rather be with you." The afternoon passes in a haze of polite conversation and carefully choreographed glances, and by the time he delivers you home, there's no question in anyone's mind that Thomas Fairchild is courting you. In modern terms, you're basically Instagram official. That evening, you barely sleep because tomorrow, Thomas is coming to speak with your father, a meeting that, in this world, means only one thing. You rise early, dress in pale blue, because you remember him once complimenting the color, and spend the morning trying not to vibrate with anticipation. When the hour comes, he's shown not to you, but to your father's study, and you're left in the drawing room with your mother, pretending to sew, while your entire future is decided one room away. After an eternity, probably 20 minutes, the study door opens, and Thomas enters, looking both relieved and uncharacteristically nervous. Your father announces that Mr. Fairchild has something to discuss with you, and for the first time, you're left alone together. The door open, but your heart's pounding like you've been caught committing treason. He calls you Jane, your given name, for the first time, says he holds you in the highest esteem, and asks if you would do him the honor of accepting his hand in marriage. You accept, of course, after the obligatory pause to feign surprise, and he slips a sapphire ring onto your finger, its weight both literal and symbolic. Your parents return. Congratulations are exchanged in restrained Victorian style, and you realize you have just successfully navigated the most perilous social maze of your life. Outside, the streets of London are still choked with fog, the gas lamps casting halos in the damp air. But inside, your future is suddenly clear. You are engaged, the rules have been obeyed, the game has been won, and now a whole new set of expectations begins. The morning after your engagement, word spreads faster than a coal fire in a paper mill, not because you told anyone, but because the Victorian grapevine is both merciless and efficient. By the time you descend to breakfast, your mother is already fielding congratulatory notes delivered by breathless footmen, and your father is pretending to read the newspaper while clearly enjoying the boost to the family's social standing. You, meanwhile, are officially transformed from a respectable but unremarkable young lady into the future Mrs. Fairchild, which means every glance, every gesture, every syllable that leaves your lips is now being silently evaluated against the gold standard of ideal bride. First rule, no public displays of affection. If you and Thomas were to hold hands in the street, Mrs. Pennington, who lives 3 doors down, would probably faint into her parasol, and your mother would need smelling salts. Your courtship, though now formal, remains as chaperoned as a royal procession. You may sit together in the drawing room, but only on separate chairs, and only with a third party in the room at all times. Your letters to him are inspected, discreetly, but inspected nonetheless, and your conversations are filtered through layers of polite euphemism. You never say "I love you" outright. Instead, you talk about the weather and allow your eyes to linger half a second too long. This, in Victorian terms, is practically indecent. Wedding preparations begin immediately, and they are less Pinterest board and more military campaign. Your trousseau must be assembled. Dresses, undergarments, stockings, gloves, handkerchiefs, bonnets, each item stitched or embroidered with the kind of care normally reserved for holy relics. Your wedding dress will be white, not because of some modern notion of purity, but because Queen Victoria wore white in 1840 and made it the law of fashion ever since. The gown is ordered from a dressmaker whose tiny, precise stitches could hold a building together, and fittings become a regular ordeal. each one requiring you to stand perfectly still for hours while being prodded with pins. Guests must be invited by handwritten note, naturally, and seating arrangements considered with the diplomatic sensitivity of a peace treaty. Who sits near whom can decide the success or failure of the event. You're warned that Mrs. Pembroke must never be placed near the Barclays after last year's regrettable argument over the bishop's sermon, and heaven forbid the Fairchild cousins are seated with anyone who might bring up the incident with the goat. While your mother and aunts fret over flowers, menus, and music, you are focused on the other great hurdle, the pre-wedding social appearances. Goat. These are mandatory, exhausting, and involve standing in drawing rooms while a rotating cast of acquaintances beams at you as though you've won a prize in a contest you didn't know you'd entered. They comment on how radiant you look. Translation: we're mentally judging your weight and skin tone. Ask coy questions about your honeymoon, which you answer with polite vagueness, and subtly inspect your ring for both size and quality. At each of these gatherings, Thomas appears, always immaculate, always attentive, but never for too long, because the appearance of independence is as important as the relationship itself. And then, the day arrives. The morning is a flurry of activity, maids carrying flowers, footmen hauling in trays of food, your hair being twisted and pinned until your scalp protests. The dress, when you finally step into it, feels heavy and strangely armor-like, its satin and lace designed to be admired more than worn. The veil falls over your face like a soft curtain, turning the world gauzy and unreal. In the carriage to the church, your father sits beside you, unusually quiet. When you arrive, the doors swing open, and you step into a world of candlelight, organ music, and 100 pairs of eyes trained on you. The ceremony itself is brief, solemn, and full of phrases about duty and obedience that make your modern sensibilities itch, but here, in this century, they are the very pillars of matrimony. Thomas takes your hand still gloved and slips a plain gold band onto your finger, sealing the arrangement, not just in love, but in law. Outside, the crowd erupts in cheers. The carriages line up for the procession, and you climb in beside your new husband for the first ride of your married life. The reception is a whirlwind of toasts, polite laughter, and the inevitable inspection of the bride's table manners. You dance once, only once, because a bride who dances too much risks appearing frivolous, and the rest of the evening is spent thanking guests until your jaw aches from smiling. When at last you depart, the well-wishers shower you with rice, the carriage clatters into the night, and you feel the strangest mix of exhilaration and dread, because in the Victorian world, the wedding is not the end of the story, it's the beginning of an entirely new set of rules. As a married woman, your life narrows and expands in equal measure. You now have the authority to run a household, direct servants, and manage the social calendar, but your behavior is more scrutinized than ever. You may not attend certain events without your husband's permission. You may not walk alone in public. You may not, under any circumstances, express opinions on politics in mixed company. Your days are filled with correspondence, charity visits, and the endless management of domestic affairs, all performed under the watchful gaze of neighbors and acquaintances who will, without hesitation, report any slip to the greater social network. And yet, within these confines, you learn the real skill of Victorian living, the art of subtle power. You discover that a raised eyebrow at the right moment can shut down gossip before it starts, that seating a troublesome guest next to someone with a fondness for long, dull monologues is a socially acceptable form of punishment, and that a well-placed compliment can secure an invitation that might otherwise never come. Months pass, seasons turn, and you adapt, your modern instincts dulled into compliance by repetition and necessity. You and Thomas develop an unspoken rhythm, a shared glance across a crowded room, when someone says something absurd, a hand resting lightly on your back as you navigate a crowded staircase, a quiet conversation in the carriage on the way home about the evening's triumphs and disasters. And one evening, years later, you will sit by the fire in the drawing room, a cup of tea cooling in your hand, and think back to that first morning when you woke up to coal smoke and cabbage and realized you were no longer in your own century. You'll smile, not because the rules made sense, but because you learned how to live with them, bend them, and in your own quiet way, win. And maybe, just maybe, you'll admit to yourself that surviving Victorian society wasn't about the dress, or the tea, or even the marriage. It was about knowing when to play the game, and when to let everyone else think you were playing, while you quietly wrote your own. Looking back, you realize the Victorian world was less a place and more a performance, every smile rehearsed, every step choreographed, every conversation scripted for maximum respectability and minimum authenticity. It was a society obsessed with appearances, yet held together by the quiet rebellions of people who knew how to bend the rules without breaking them. You survived the corsets, the calling cards, the dinner parties, and the polite warfare of social life. And while part of you is relieved to return to a century where you can wear sweatpants and order pizza at midnight, another part can't help but admire the sheer audacity of living in a world where even the way you held a teacup could define your fate. So next time you complain about small talk at a work event, remember it could be worse. You could be in a crinoline, sipping lukewarm tea, pretending you care about Mrs. Pembroke's begonias,